Hey everybody, welcome to the live stream. We're just waiting for Jeffrey, and for some reason I pushed the button early. I don't have anything much to say. Thank you for tuning into our live streams, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Central, every Sunday, right here on YouTube at Public Access America. But don't forget about our other network partners, like Adam Has a Beard. He doesn't have a live stream, but he does have a podcast, and you can find that on Spotify, which is really exciting. And our friend Kai has a podcast, Unsubscribe, period. You'll know that because it's got the black background and it's the multicolored giant unsubscribe. Go ahead and listen to her. She's amazing, and she does an introspective, mostly single person episode, but sometimes we just all share content because that's the goal here at Public Access America. We are a collection of diverse perspectives that get together to have a long form conversation to create empathy and understanding. Once we all know what we all know, we can go forward knowing the same thing. But when we stay divided in what's important to us, then we can't get anything done. You know what I mean? We're just a bunch of chickens with our head cut off. And we're trying to bring back long form conversation, rational discussion, critical thinking. I know that's a word that gets thrown around because you can put anything in the middle of it, but it's critical thinking. Remember, critical thinking isn't about um, blaming anybody. It's about fixing things. You know what I mean? Like little microorganisms, like like your antibodies. Critical race theory is just a way to examine our system and remove any racial biases. And that's only a good thing in the effort for equality. People on Twitter at Public Access Pod ask me all the time, what are your hopes from your podcast? And I tell them the same thing: world peace through equality. And that's what we always aim for. So, hey, John Johnson, thank you for being a part of the show. We're going to have you on soon, John. And John is really into astrology, and his tweets are really amazing. And he and I are learning about racism together on separate paths, and we're going to get together and talk about it. And I think that's cool. Also, don't forget Inspirations Beyond Disabilities. We had Claire from the UK on the show talking about body image and dysmorphia and exercise and routines and habits and all those wonderful things. Peanut butter, bacon, things like that we don't like. And it was a really great show. We recorded for a couple hours, 3 hours, and then Kai from Unsubscribe took the content and I took the content, and we each made episodes about it. So what's really cool is you can go listen on Unsubscribe and hear the same content, but then hear how I did it. And Kai and I have this great podcaster battle going on, like Cypress Hill. We're two members of the group just spinning our own influences off the content we create. And that's what life is about. That's what it's all about. We're all individual contributors that put our take on the content and then show it to you. You know what I mean? Somebody was trying to explain politics in a really great way. And the truth is it's like a picture on Instagram, and you zoom in and you put a filter on it and it suddenly doesn't look like what it was before. And I think we're all doing that with the stories that come out. You know what I mean? We talk about the negatives, but we don't talk about the positives. And we're going to throw in a little bit of both, a little humanism along with a little bit of politics. We're not political per se, but I like to say we take political topics and pull them out of that swamp back to our campfire, and we all talk about it. And you're more than welcome to sit down at the campfire with a good beverage and listen in and even have your opinion shared here. You know what I mean? So thank you for being here. Wow. I wonder what's going on with Jeffrey. He seems a little late. That seems weird, but that's okay. Let's see. So listen to Inspirations Beyond Disabilities. Hey, Katie Anderson, thank you for being a fan. I appreciate that. Hey, Rogue One at I'm a mega douchebag on Twitter. We're going to discuss your topic about voter IDs if Jeffrey shows up. So we are going to continue conversations that begin on Twitter. I don't know if you do follow us, you saw that yesterday I posted a bunch of statistics about hate crimes because I believe that disability discrimination is on the rise, along with all other forms of discrimination, lack of conversation. So, what is a hate crime? You know what I mean? What's the definition of a hate crime? What are the statistics for hate crimes? Who's affected by hate crimes? And we did have a Twitter poll that asked, do you think hate crimes go underreported or do you think they're over sensationalized? And we did get a vote for underreported, and I believe the same thing. I wish more people had been a part of that because I think the answer would have been the same, just with more people saying it. I don't think in the States they necessarily want more hate crimes associated with their state. So I think they discount them a little more. And from disabled people to people of color to minorities to gender biases to gender identity biases, you know, hate crimes are all over the place. It seems like a small amount when you consider that like 8,000 of them were in 2020. 8,000 people were affected by hate by 11,000, over 11,000 hate crimes. And that's bad, but that's underreported, much like COVID, we believe. You know what I mean? Statistics are manipulated, and that's kind of my interest in having Jeffrey on the show. So yeah, we will be right back when he gets here. Thanks for listening to Public Access America. Oh, yeah, I'm still live streaming. Isn't that interesting? Damn it. I gave him the wrong one. What the? Fuck. Okay. I shared the wrong link with Jeffrey. That explains a lot. So we're there. We're there. What is that? What is going on here? Keep sharing the YouTube link. Sorry, people on the live stream. Right, we're gonna edit that out. It's so weird. Technology is weird, and when it updates, everything changes. But we're here. We got you. We got you. Here's Jeffrey. My bad. Hi, buddy. Boom.
There we go.
I love that. There wasn't even a fade in. It was just background Jeffrey. Boom.
Surprise, motherfucker.
I don't know why I copied to paste it, copy pasted, and it was the YouTube stream in every one of them. So
Yep. Oh,
sorry
well, I
about
mean,
that.
it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, every time technology updates, it's something different that you never notice. I mean, I don't look at the link chain, you know what I mean? I set that up 3 days ago.
Right.
Oh, I do love the beard. What do you think? Mm,
Keep going with it. Keep
yeah,
going.
I have to.
As long as you don't end up with one of those beards that look like you should stay 300 feet away from a school.
Oh yeah, no. That's my issue. If I shave the mustache, suddenly I look like a Floridian, but if I keep it, I suddenly look like a Midwesterner. So I'm good with the Midwestern look, you know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Although there was this tweet on Twitter saying, "What is one thing that puts you off about a man?" And facial hair was one of those that I was really surprised a lot of women said they didn't like because they all gravitate towards beards, although they all want you to shave them, because they give me a little rash when you try and kiss them. You know what I mean?
Well, that's where proper beard care comes in.
That's
You got to
right.
clean that thing. You got to condition that thing.
That's right. That's right. I,
You
I
know,
gave I gave a shout out to Malta earlier. I was telling Malta that we need a all-inclusive vacation for about 20 people so that we can do our 4 podcasts from Malta. You know what I mean? I
I
love
wouldn't.
Malta.
I wouldn't mind that. That sounds lovely.
Right? Just live streaming on our phones, checking out megalithic structures, great food, good beaches, beautiful people, and just Malta. That sounds great. So I'm all in favor of that.
That would, wouldn't I wouldn't mind doing that. Just like go there, check things out, have some
Hmm.
It'd be great to have some conversations with the locals and be able to, talk
Yeah.
to them about, what their experience is and what how they see us and
Hmm.
recognize the fact that we rarely ever see anything about Malta. So,
Right. That's why I bring them up. And every time I do, we get more listens from Malta. And honestly, I went on Twitter, looked up the Prime Minister of Malta, and actually invited him on the show because I'm that interested in it seems like the one place on the earth that nobody talks about. And it's like this, it must be this hidden gem, but I see it on all these investigation shows where they go and unearth the unknown about history. And Malta's megalithic structures are always in those shows. And Malta,
mhm.
just around the places, it just looks beautiful. You know?
Oh, right. And and I think that's one of those things where if we ever got the chance to, go and have that conversation there, that'd be fun.
That would be fun, as well as fun for our families and our other podcasts. I mean, that's like 4 or 5 podcasts just
Hmm.
recording and streaming and promoting Malta for as long as we're there, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know,
Sorry.
I
No,
think
Malta doesn't sponsor us, by the way.
no,
I'm I'm just amazed with that Malta equals like or is greater in listenership than a lot of other countries. We're in about 120 countries and Malta is in our top 20. And that just fascinates me. You know?
hey, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
That's
it really is.
fantastic.
So I have a list of topics, you know what I mean,
Ooh.
to bring up, and then I have some things on my mind, of course, because I plan for everything when Jeffrey's getting here. Thanks for doing that show last week. That last live stream was just beautiful. Like the first hour, I just got to chapter list it, and it was just really cool to like try and follow that and like tell people the topics that are coming up minute by minute, so that like on YouTube when we put it up, you can just click on the chapter. So,
Hmm.
if they're talking about shingles, you can click on that. If we're talking about like media discussions, that's another chapter. So it's really cool. Thank you and Dan for doing that.
Oh
I
yeah.
feel I feel like two Maseratis got on the track for the first time. You know what I mean? That was amazing to me.
I mean, to me, it's more like good old American muscle, but I
There
love
you
good old
go.
American muscle cars. Something about them.
Maserati just sounds good, just like Jaguar sounds good. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Of course, a Hemi Cuda sounds really good too.
And a good old Trans Am sounds good, and a
Mm,
Corvette and Camaro.
yeah.
Yeah.
I had an 81 Firebird, the leaf springs went, and every time I put people in the back seat, they would just, and I was the driver, so I always had like 6 people in my car.
I worked on a 78 Trans Am, and
Mm,
we had that thing running almost 200 miles an hour. That
yeah.
thing was just a beast. It was stupid.
Yeah. That's the great thing about the old muscle cars is you could take anything in the demographic. You could take like a Pontiac motor and put it in a Chevy body. You know what I
Yep.
mean? As long as you weren't taking a Chrysler, you could put pretty much because my Chevy, I think it was a Trans Am, had a Pontiac 305. And
Yep.
everybody's like, that's not a 305, that's a Chevy 300, and it was this big long discussion, but I was just so
Pontiac,
proud.
Chevrolet, GM. Like the 305 was the 305 was the 305. It's kind of like the
Hmm.
350. The 350
Yes.
was the 350 was the 350.
That was my
Like,
first motor ever in
oh God, I loved it.
71 Cutlass. Yeah.
That old 350 Chevy. I mean,
Oh,
that thing was just. I got so many memories with that engine. Like if I
Right.
could have like my quote unquote zombie vehicle, it would be that
Mhm.
350 Chevy. Because I mean, you could work on that thing so easy. That thing,
Yeah.
had plenty of power to do whatever you needed it to do. It was damn near bomb proof.
You couldn't kill it. Like I couldn't kill it. I raced a Corvette and dropped it into low gear for some reason. I thought it
Whoops.
would give me extra power. And we got to the next light and the Corvette was like, at some point we just were trying to get away from you because we thought you were gonna blow up. And I was like, yeah, that was my first race ever.
Oopsies.
You see him
No,
in the
that
you see
that
him in movies.
350.
You see him in movies downshift, and you're like, oh, so that's what I do in a race. Nah, that's not what you do in a
No,
race.
no, that is not what you do.
Right. So
No, that old 350 Chevy. We had three different vehicles that had that engine in it, and the one that went the least amount of miles was mine, and it had 350,000 miles on it.
wow.
The other two went 400,000 and 500,000 miles.
Mm. My buddy
And
had
and
a
now it's like at 100,000 miles with the newer engines, I start getting nervous.
yeah, well, they're built like that. Even the electric motors have a limiter on the battery after a certain period of
Mm.
time, and but you can change that. My buddy did that. He erased that, so now he's getting full efficiency again.
Oh yeah.
My buddy had a 350 in his car, and he used to drive to the lake and then pull it out, put it in his boat, ride around the lake all day, come back, put it back in his car. So that's how easy those things were to work on.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
No, like, and especially like if, like take the hood off the thing, you could literally sit in the freaking body of that thing and work
yeah,
on it. Oh no, it was
right.
so easy. It was so nice to be able to work on those cars.
Yeah.
Like that's I will say that is one of the things that I miss about the current realm of technology is that it's just not easy to repair some of that stuff yourself. Like
Right.
I will say some of it has gotten better, like some of the stuff that you have to change out somewhat regularly, they're making it
Hmm.
so that way those things are easier to get to. Just because they realized they were screwing themselves on that one. Like there was
Right.
like my '06 Impala that I had, front three cylinders right there, easy access, no issues. Back
Hmm.
three cylinders, you like had to fucking snake your hand back there and
Yeah.
wiggle, and it's like you'd have to put your socket in there with the spark plug puller, and then you put that extension in there, and then you put the fucking thing on the ratchet on there, and then you work it, but you can't see what you're doing, so it's all entirely blind. And I
Hope you
dropped a
don't
spark
crack it.
plug. I
Yeah.
I dropped one after I got it out. It just didn't stick in the spark plug puller, and
Hmm.
it fucking came out and fell out, and then I had to take the wheel off to get to it, and it was like fucking mess. It was like,
Yeah.
but with my Malibu now, it's like they're just all right on top, and it's like, okay, cool. This is
Hmm.
where it should be. Like these are the ones, like if you have to change something, it's going to be right up here. So you might as well have the ability to just change that shit right here, right now.
Yeah. But cars are the one thing that hasn't become do it yourself. Like we build our
Mhm.
furniture, we build our foods, like everything we build except for cars. There in cars, we just push that out.
I will say one of the things that I do look forward to with electric vehicles is the fact that you do have so many fewer moving parts.
Mm,
I mean, you have a lot of sensors and a lot of wiring and a lot of electronics, yeah. But in terms of like the number of moving parts that you have, I will say one of the things that without knowing how well some of these things are designed, for example, uh, cable companies. um, when they're trying to figure out where you have a dead spot in your wall, like where you're losing signal,
right.
they're able to trace where at in the line the signal stops, and they can locate that. And so, like, we did that too. Like when you'd have like that electronic sensor that would just be like, okay, sends enough current, and then okay, here's where the current stops. Okay, I know
Right.
where we're at. So it's one of those things where it's like if they designed it right, they'll be able to put you know current and code through, and they'll figure out real quickly where there's something has died or anything like that. And
Hmm.
with so many fewer moving parts, because now you just have electric motors and your suspension system, it becomes a lot more efficient to work on because there's only going to be so many things that happen,
Yeah.
be it battery, be it motors, be it suspension issues, be it braking system, and then of course then you move into the electronics and sensors, and that's where that'll get a little bit hairy. And my hope is that if you've ever had to replace a wire harness before, my hope is that they've designed these things well enough that they are easy to fucking replace.
Right. I think it's just simple to put a diagnostic tool in the charger itself, and I think at that point it could just tell you on your phone every day, like, this is what's wrong with your car, if there is something wrong, or your car's good to go when you unplug it, things like that. So the technology will be there to self-diagnose, and I think that'll help with the
Oh
cost of
yeah.
it. You
I
know
think
what I
if
mean?
I think if I think if Chevrolet or Ford or Tesla or any of those companies thought about that, where you could like Bluetooth into your car, you
Mm-hmm.
had the diagnostic tool, and when something came up, it sent the code to your phone, and then it would give you the option to be like, all right, let's book an appointment with Chevrolet to get this fixed,
Right.
things like that.
They could even
Toyota.
self-diagnose and upgrade software so that a lot of those problems and bugs would just be eliminated before you
Mhm.
even got up?
Well, and I think that's where it could go.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where it's like, when you think about design of your vehicles, you have to be thinking towards the future. What's
Mm-hmm.
going to make it easier, not just for the person that owns your product, but the people that are going to be working on it too.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if you know that there's a right rear sensor that has gone out, and it can communicate to the dealership saying, hey, this vehicle with this VIN number had a right
Mm-hmm.
rear sensor go out. They can have the part ready for you, and they're like, all right, cool, I want you to pull in at 8:30, we'll get this taken care of, and by 9 you're out the door.
Right. And
you know
if they make preventative maintenance lower cost than avoidance costs, you know what I mean? Like that
exactly.
sensor goes out and you don't have the time or money to fix it. That creates bigger problems that then create snowball bills. But yeah, it could just be under warranty if you do it in the system. And then you could just, yeah, go in and have your tire filled if it's low?
Exactly. There's going to be a number of places, number of things that you can do that I think are going to really improve the quality of vehicles. Like, I know, for example, there's a company out there that they've made a different battery that fits exactly in the Tesla, and it gets twice the range. It's like, I
Yeah.
know that stuff like that's going to void the warranty, but at the same time, I think what happens there is that you know at least in this near term, it becomes incumbent upon everybody to try and figure out how do you improve this technology. I was reading an article, why hasn't America fallen in love with the electric vehicle, and
Yeah.
I sat down and I started thinking about it, and it's like, well, I know the answer to this, and it's convenience and inconvenience and cost, the three things. So cost right now of electric vehicles is sky high. Basically, if you don't have any payments whatsoever, yeah, you can go out and get yourself an electric vehicle. You're still looking at a minimum $30,000 for an electric vehicle at this point.
The government offers 15,000 in subsidies, so that kind of helps, no?
Well, it's a pain in the ass to get those subsidies is the thing.
Probably, but shouldn't the dealer be doing that for you?
One would hope, but no, it becomes incumbent upon you because it all goes through your own taxes.
So it's a
So you're
collection of coupons. I hate coupon fucking society.
Well, that's all this is that you buy the electric vehicle, you file your taxes, and you say you bought an electric vehicle, and then they cut 15 grand off your taxes. And that's
Gotcha.
how it works. And that's why I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I could see where, but at the same time too, it's like, okay, that's really dumb, because literally it should be that, you know, they have all of these coupons to cut the cost. The dealer gets the 15 grand for the coupon, you get that 15
Mhm.
grand off the purchase of the vehicle, bam, you got somebody in a vehicle really quick. There's no fucking
Well, I want to
dirtiness to
finance. I
this.
want to finance 15 grand. I don't want to finance 30 grand and then get half of it paid off. I'm still
Right.
paying the higher interest rates on 15 grand.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where it's like, the way that it's
Hmm.
being done is fucking dumb. And so
Right.
that's one part of it when you look at the cost of it. Then you have the inconvenience of owning an electric vehicle. And I say that because if you live in the big city, if you live in the city like I do, there
Hmm.
really isn't much inconvenience. It's when you decide to go anywhere. And so you have to make sure that wherever you're going to stop is going to have, charging stations. That's
Mm.
definitely improved from, like, 2010, when, I was looking at these things and they were,
Yeah.
100 grand.
You got
But at the same time
300
too,
miles. You get 300 miles on a charge, and
you got 300
you're
miles
200 miles
max.
away from home.
You got
Yeah.
300 miles max, and if you quick charge it in 15 minutes, then you get 80% of your battery. You don't actually get the full 300.
Right.
So, you're sitting at, 240 miles of actual range, not 300
Mhm.
miles.
But
So,
range has gotten better, right? Like 700 miles, I think, was the latest one I
well,
heard.
but that's somebody doing their own thing, and not
Ah,
integrating with Tesla's technology.
okay.
And then you got that whole time. How much time does it take to recharge? How much time does it take you to normally fill up your fuel tank? Yeah, 5 minutes
Right.
maybe versus 15 minutes. Now, okay, this is where some of this is a little bit negligible. Like if you're trying to just do like just a road trip where it's like, okay, we don't really have a set schedule.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you're like, oh shit, I got to get to work, and you're like, ah crap, I'm out of gas. Like it's easy to just go quick throw a couple of bucks in the tank and get yourself to work and then deal with it later. But
Right.
with electric vehicles, that's not necessarily the case, at least right now. I
So you
say that
can't put an eighth of a battery in and get where you need to go and then charge?
you might be able to, but not as fast as you can just quick throw a couple of bucks of gas in a tank. And so
Gotcha.
like, so I think that like as that infrastructure improves, I think it'll become more competitive in that realm. But to me personally, it kind of feels like, a way that you could revive that old feeling of the road trip where,
Mm-hmm.
you went to these places, you stopped, you gassed up, you walked around just to kind of see the sights real quick, and it was like, a quick little like Americana trip down, memory lane for some people. And I think
Right.
that, in a way that, the electric vehicle in the short term will do that. And I think in the long term, you'll see more solutions come through. I know, like, for
Self-charging,
example,
right? Yeah.
yeah, you've got self-charging, like some are working on building solar collectors into their
Mm-hmm.
systems. You've got some that
The brake
like
rotors
the
recharge the battery too
that's
sometimes.
already in there.
Right. That's what
um
I'm saying.
but like the Dutch are working on roads that, number one, collect electricity, but number two,
Yeah.
wirelessly charge vehicles.
That's awesome, isn't it?
It's wild to me. I think it's great, but it's one of those things where that technology's still a ways out there. And
Mm-hmm.
then, but because you have such a wide variety of vehicles, then the question becomes, how does that self-charging road handle against, 18 wheelers, farm equipment, things like that.
Right. Right.
So, there are limitations unknown yet, and that's just one of those things that you'll have to find out as time goes on.
That's the fun of science and creation and, inventiveness. That's why we're alive, is to better the world like that way, to come up with those great Tesla ideas that move us through time faster,
Right.
all of these great things we learn to it. Somebody was talking about that why don't people believe science anymore? And it's just like that's what's creating the backwardsness in our advancement, is that people just don't believe in advancements anymore. And I just don't understand that. They question every advancement.
Well, and that's the thing is like it's not even like how it's not even that it gets questioned. Like, for me, I absolutely had my questions about, the advancement of electric vehicles at first, you
Hmm.
know, because you have to have electricity in order to advance those vehicles. Okay, well, what is your source of electricity? Coal, natural gas.
Right.
Okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. Cool. We're not burning gas in our vehicles or diesel in our vehicles, but now we have to offset that somewhere. And now you have these power plants that are having to generate that electricity. As
Hmm.
more renewables have come online, or more carbon free sources, I say that because I really think nuclear needs to be part of the discussion
Of course.
still. Um,
Thorium, right?
Thorium reactors.
Yeah.
Yep.
Boom. Yeah.
And I think that as more renewables come online, as more carbon free sources of electricity come online, I really do believe that that is not going to be a discussion anymore. 10 years ago, absolutely was still a discussion, but now it's like we're getting there
Yeah.
slowly.
Right.
And so to me, it's one of those things where I have hope. The third issue is that I think that, a lot of Americans, I would say, are, we've fallen in love with the idea of, being able to replace our technology every couple of years. And
Mhm.
at a certain point it starts to become just fucking old. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
why is it suddenly that this thing is obsolete? Like, why is it that you can't extend the life of something that, for by and large still works just fine? And I think that, one of the issues that if one of these companies needs to solve for is, how do you convert existing gas vehicles into electric vehicles? I think that there's a way to do it, and I think that there's a way to make some great money off of it. There's some private organizations out there that are working on that solution itself. Why, why should you have all of these perfectly good vehicles have to suddenly go off the road because they simply have an internal combustion engine? Why can't you just take that vehicle, modify it, and then have an electric vehicle? And
Okay,
that's
I'm okay with people having an antique car. You know what I mean?
right.
That's cool.
Imagine if you could like take some of those antiques and upgrade them to be electric. Think of, like, could you imagine an old Chevy Bel Air but with a fucking electric motor on it?
Right. That would,
You
and it
know,
has all the space in the world for solar technology.
seriously.
Yeah.
I think that there's going to be like some freakers out there that Frankenstein some of these vehicles, and I think it's going to be fantastic.
I've
You
seen
know,
that with hydrogen, with the hydrogen replacements that go
yep,
across the roof and have the little cylinder up on top that show the bubbles and the train. You know what I mean? I've seen that stuff. It works, but that
absolutely.
those are people in their garage just coming up with weird solutions like I used to do when I used to make my 12 stage bongs. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's the thing is, like, when we look at why people are questioning, these advancements, like, they're not questioning them from a point of, is this sustainable? Is this something that's cost effective? Is it cost
No,
efficient?
right.
Is it efficient to produce? A lot of the times you're seeing people question this on this weird, pseudo moral, pseudo religious
Yes.
discourse, and it doesn't make any sense because,
It's like aliens coming from the sky and people freaking out because their God is different over an electric car. It's not based on, like you were saying, facts. It's just based on this irrational backfilling the logic of like not liking it.
well, and that's the thing is, like, I've had this discussion with multiple people. It's like, what you could say is the work of the devil, I could also, uniquely say is the work of the Lord, because it's,
That's right.
you have people that are given these gifts, and if you are inclined to believe that these gifts come from a higher power, then who are you to say that this gift was given by the devil instead of given by God? And so it's like,
Right.
it's a weird irrational fear
Yeah.
that gets posed in this, like I said, pseudo moral, pseudo religious pretext, and it makes no
hmm
sense.
The greatest gift God ever gave us was choice. And so you'll always have choices, and your role is to make the best choice for you. But that doesn't mean instantly having an opinion and then backfilling the logic for having the opinion. It's having an opinion, listening to the conversation, being a part of the conversation, and then solidifying an opinion at the end of the learning process. And I think
Right.
people are doing it backwards. Critical race theory, I don't like those three words together. And then they backfill the logic of why they don't, instead of learning what it is and going forward and seeing that it's not a part of their life. And we got to get past that. That's what public access does. Forward conversation, you know.
Right. And some of these conversations, it's like, with certain friends and family members, I've had that, I've had
hmm
to start that. It's like, why does this bother you? Well, this, that, and the other. I'm like, and where did you hear that? Well, I
Right.
heard it from and read it from this source. I'm like, okay, and how does that make any sense? Like, where did they get this from?
hmm
Oh, okay. So you don't know where they're getting these weird claims from, but you're willing to accept them.
Right.
That's part of the whole problem of do your own research. Do your own research works if you know how to research. And then
Right.
that's the thing. Looking something up on Google is not research. Like, it's a tool to help you learn certain things,
Mm.
but you have to use that tool in order to get information from various sources, corroborate findings, and you can't just use sources that
Right.
fit your worldview. Like, don't get me wrong, I can go out and find a bunch of different things, but I have to make sure that the statements that are made are proven time and again.
Right. I
And
totally
so, or
agree.
the claims that are made are proven time and again.
Do your own research is a mega trope to get you to offer something that they can reject as a
Right.
fact. It's not give me a fact so I can learn. It's give me a fact so I can dispute it on its face and irritate you. You know?
Mhm.
I had
Like,
this discussion on Twitter with Rogue One. I'm a MAGA douchebag. He says voter IDs are necessary, and I said, but the process in which you get them are is tainted. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. It has been. Do you want people to have to count jelly beans to get an ID? He says that doesn't happen. I said it did happen. He says, but it won't happen. And I said, there you go. I'm giving you facts based on history. You're giving me an opinion about what you think the future is. And he said, well, that's not fair. And I said, voter IDs can be used to suppress people's vote. He said, fair enough. And then I sent him an article about something in Texas where people got mailed the old applications to get a voter ID. And so their 40,000 applications were rejected because they were the old application. And the law also states that giving those people the correct application is a felony. So they can no longer get an application, which means they can't get a voter ID, which means they can't vote. He didn't even read the article. It took him 2 seconds to say, that's bullshit. That's not happening. And what I told him was, you said it wouldn't. It is. I'm right. And that's all the argument was. And I told him, come on the show and discuss this with me. I don't shrink from name calling. I'm trying to have a rational discussion, but he just kept trying to get me angry with words like name calling, hoping I would give up, but I didn't give up. And he had to admit that I was right. We reached a compromise on it. You know what I mean?
hmm
And
and that's the thing, and that's, that's one of those things where it's like, I don't understand why we've had to have this discussion the way that we have.
right.
There are very few things that should preclude the right to vote. And
Hmm.
number one, it's, are you an American citizen?
That's right.
I, we know that that is a given right to American citizens. That's one of the rights that we have innately, is how we put it.
Right.
We don't allow non-Americans to vote.
Right.
At least until recently, New York is piloting the idea of non-Americans being able to vote, and
But people that have applied, that have green cards, that have, I mean, not
mhm,
visitors, not visas, but people that have applied to become
resident
citizens.
aliens, or
Once they reach a certain point in the process to where they are going to go forward and they're not going to slip back, then they have the right to vote. It's not just giving
right,
migrants, free
right,
reign over
exactly.
our elections.
It's not this idea that you get to show up and suddenly, you're voting.
Right.
Also, too, like, I want to call out for a moment, the idea that some of these migrants are coming in to vote for Democrats is just pretty funny as it is, because when you look
Right.
at a lot of where some of the places that they come from, like, conservative politics actually tends to be more what they're looking for,
More
you
liberal
know
than what they're used to.
absolutely. And so, for a lot of them, the idea that, you know you've got this party that tends to hinge on, more of the religious
Mhm.
freedom side of things, and that speaks to them. That's been one of those things where I think when you look at the left and their marketing tactic of, if you're a person of color, you need to be voting liberal. And
Yeah.
then when they get spanked at the polls because a bunch of people of color voted conservative, it's like,
Hmm.
you didn't see how this would backfire? You didn't think that there would be people of color that are conservative?
Oh,
Like,
there's what Florida is full of Cubans that do not like Democrats. Texas is full of Mexican Americans that do not like Democrats because they don't know they have the right to begin with. So they don't know they're being suppressed. You know what I mean? They hear law and order and they think they're safe. You know, I got
exactly.
across and they're stopping others from getting across. Good. I want mine. I don't want them to have mine. And it's that belief that there's not enough of America to go around, you know?
Right. And so it's absolutely hilarious to me that, that the conservative playbook is, we don't want, supposedly we don't want the other people to be voting, even though
Right.
they're going to be voting. A lot of them are going to be voting Republicans. But then the Democrats' idea is that, if you're not voting liberal, then you're not a real person of color, or whatever their fucking line is.
Right.
I think the best one, like one of my friends posted, was like, for the workers, it's like, hey, we want workers' rights. Republicans, no. Democrats, no. Heart, gay pride flag, hashtag BLM,
We'll get
and
to
it's
it.
like, exactly. It's
Yeah.
it's I understand why some people would rather just choose no. It's like
Right.
it's like, great, that's cool that you have all of these things that you absolutely, you think you're full of love and pride, and you
Mm-hmm.
think, look, anybody can slogan this bullshit, but if the answer is no, just no, then just say no. Like,
Yeah.
don't fucking hashtag all of this shit. Don't fucking try and tie your party to all of these different movements and then forsake them
Right.
when it's time. It's like, when you look at how things have gone in the last year for Biden, like that was one of the things that I was laughing about. It's like, you think about that Bernie sitting there cross-armed in mittens. That meme
Uh-huh.
is a year old. That's it. Only 1 year. And it feels like a fucking eternity since that fucking meme came out.
Joe Biden has acted like the guy from Gran Torino, going out and shouting at people to get off his lawn because everybody was telling him to do it. Like, there's no sustained effort from the guy, and that's our issue. That's my issue as an independent that
Mhm.
was a Democrat, that was a conservative. I didn't like conservatives, so I thought Democrat was my answer, but no. And I tell everybody the same thing. Like, you're just handing your money to somebody that won't be able to do anything for you. Save your money and run as an independent, you know?
Right, and or stop voting to politicians. I was having that discussion about how, a lot of the politicians are managing to keep up these very, you know, mm, rich lifestyles, despite the fact that they
Yes.
make what 196,000 a year, I think is what they're at.
Right.
And it's like, that doesn't make any sense, because I know what the cost of living is out in DC, and it's fucking astronomical. I'm like, oh, that's right. Everybody has a pack, and then a bunch of people
Right.
donate to these packs, and then quote unquote everything is a campaign event. Okay, I get it.
But
That's
you gotta
bullshit.
see them closer as timeshare salesmen. Donald Trump is the best timeshare salesman out of a group of timeshare salesmen. He's selling air, he's selling an idea, he's selling a belief that people are buying into for his endorsement, and they're giving him 25% of their donations for getting his endorsement. He's selling his name not on a building, but on a politician. It's pretty genius. It's pretty smart. And he's taking advantage of a bunch of people that are taking advantage of a bunch of people that are taking advantage of a bunch of people. And it's a multi-level marketing
I was
scheme.
gonna say this. Are you saying that politics is just an MLM?
Yes, I've always said that. I've always said that. And it's the
Everybody thinks
truth.
they're their own CEO, but
Stop
really you're just getting
donating.
fucked by the guy on top of you.
Why do we pre-tip politicians, right? Like, donate to people that successfully get you your dinner on your table. Then you tip them after the meal. You don't tip them in hopes they'll do something. I don't go into a restaurant and sit down at Applebee's and give the lady $50 and hope she gives me what I want. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, it's kind of that American just the tip just to see how it
Yeah,
feels.
just
Well, we're giving the politicians quote unquote money, but when they're giving us just the tip.
right.
and
And
then and
so,
then it's like, when it's time to actually, have rubber meet road, well,
oh, I'm
surprise, we're not
sorry.
getting anything done. There's one
Oh,
thing I do want to talk about though.
sure. Can I say one thing though?
Let's do it.
Ab- About voter IDs. I just want to say, like, a MAGA person in California wouldn't trust the voter ID process. And a Democrat in Texas isn't going to trust the Texas a process to apply for a voter ID. Nobody's talking about a federal voting ID because that's not state rights. So you can't have an umbrella policy on voter IDs. So at some point they will discriminate about with everybody,
Mhm.
Democrat and Republican. They're all going to use it like they do with gerrymandering to
Oh yeah.
tailor their voters, and nobody should be happy about that. Not the right, not the left.
Nope.
Okay, so what do you want to talk
Absolutely.
about?
Well, in the same vein, let's talk about the filibuster.
Ooh, cool. Okay.
So, as we all saw, the especially because we're on the conversation of voting rights, the change in the filibuster here in the
Right.
U.S. Got shut down. Now,
Joe
Uh,
Manchin's mistress, the filibuster.
so this is one of those ones where, whew, I, you know, I have very mixed feelings on the filibuster.
I
Like,
don't.
the reason I say that is because, as somebody who has led organizations where we've done majority rules, and rights of the minority,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the times where in the organizations that I was working in, I mean, it was overwhelming that, one party or one side or one idea was going to win versus another. That's just, how it was.
Right.
And so, you preserve the rights of the minority, but there was very rarely a time that we ever had anything so split down the
Right.
middle. So you run into this question when it comes to the filibuster. It's like, if you know that the majority is supposed to rule and be able to do things, then why is it that, a minority is holding up that entire process? That seems like bullshit, right?
It's a lever to create debate.
It's a lever to create debate, number one, but number two, it also makes it very difficult to have actual rule of the majority.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on a grand political scale, when you think about the decisions that are being made in place, the idea that, if it only takes a simple majority to pass something, but it only takes a simple majority to undo something, what you end up having is this back and forth forever of
Mm-hmm.
just undoing what the last administration did. Now, this is where this whole discussion of the filibuster gets in place. Democrats love the idea of getting rid of the filibuster right now. Why is that? Because they
I
want to
would.
get their stuff done,
Mm,
and they want to be able to pass the things that they want.
I
Now,
want to say I think that's a misnomer. I think 70% of Democrats do not want to get rid of it, but 30% of the alt left. I don't know what alt left is, but I got called alt left. I think
leftist
30%,
is, I think
30,
leftist is the term they like.
30% of the Democrats believe in getting rid of it, and that I believe more closer to what you're saying. So go on, but
So
I don't think it's all Democrats because I think 70% want to keep it.
and the reason why I think a lot of people want to keep it is because the idea should be that anything that gets passed and gets approved shouldn't be able to face such an easy fight to be removed. When you look
Right.
at what happened, when it came to the Affordable Care Act, it almost got sunk by a simple majority. John McCain was the only reason it
That's right.
did. Now, here's where things get really, really tricky. The idea that the majority should be able to rule and pass the things that they want is great and fine and wonderful. It works. It's especially great when you have a super majority, like a 2/3 or
Hmm.
a 3/4. But when you're dealing with such razor thin margins, and especially in a highly politicized environment like right now, I guarantee you that if the Democrats were to have successfully removed the filibuster, what would have happened is they would have passed their voting rights legislation. And if it didn't get challenged in the federal courts,
There it
when the
is. Yeah.
Republicans took office the next time, they would undo it immediately. That'd be
And,
one of their targets.
and that's why Mitch McConnell keeps telling Democrats to eliminate the filibuster, is so that he can use it unabashedly when he gets power.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing too, is that it's short-sightedness, because Democrats would get what they want right now.
Hmm.
And they have this
And
idea that
lose everything.
if they got what they wanted right now, that magically people would be like, I'm going to vote Democrat forever. And it's just going to be
Right.
this like blue tidal wave that gives them a
Oh,
super majority. And the reality is that the Democrats haven't proven anything at this point that they're actually capable of taking care of the people. Now, I'd say that they've proven better than the Republicans, but really not by much, and
the
not by much at all.
filibuster was the only shield the Democrats had against Trump. That's the
Yep.
only thing that stopped them from falling off a cliff entirely, was using that filibuster to stop some major things. And yeah, you're right. If it disappears, that's just Mitch McConnell's, in to just destroy everything. And so I don't like that. What I have an issue with is when they use it. Like, I think the filibuster could be used before voting, but I don't think it should be used before debate. I think anything should be able to go to the floor for debate. And watching that debate, just the beginning of the debate on voting rights that they had, was completely awesome to me. Listening to those people debate back and forth, dude, Joe Manchin just tried gaslighting America, and Amy Klobuchar just came back with a boom. And Republicans are admitting things like Chuck Grassley saying, "Well, you hurt our feelings in 2013," and it was just like, and Richard Blumenthal saying, "But you're a hypocrite." It was just so cool to watch the debate. And that's the only way we get to progress. You and I, we don't argue a lot, but we don't discuss things from counterpoints. We both meet in chairs and sit and talk about things openly. They don't get
Mhm.
to, but they might start to once they realize, because sometimes when people say things out loud, it sounds stupid. It just
But
does. And I'm sure Chuck Grassley saying, "Well, I don't want people to vote in 2022 because you hurt my feelings in 2013 because we hurt your feelings in 2006." And it just starts to sound petty. You know what I
well, and
mean?
I think I will say that's the point that John McCain was making,
Uh-huh.
is that, the return to regular order where Republicans had lunch with Democrats and Democrats had
Right.
lunch with Republicans. This weird, it's us versus them in politics right now.
Hmm.
Like this whole issue regarding voting rights could have been solved had people actually been allowed to sit down and talk. And I will say that's what's
Right.
happening right now around this whole electoral college certification law of
Oh my God, yeah.
1887, is that
Right.
you're now having this sit down between Republicans and Democrats to figure out how do you fix this so that way you don't have this whole
Hmm.
question about uh, what is allowed to be done
Oh my
by
God.
Republicans
Like,
or Democrats. And I say this because if Donald Trump is able to use the elections are not legitimate because I think that there were a bunch of people signed up to vote that
mhm.
shouldn't have been allowed to vote. The Democrats are going to use the I don't think the election was legitimate because a bunch of people who should have been allowed to vote were not. And
That's
then you have
exactly
the
the
same issue that
yeah.
happened last year.
That's the scenario. And that you can't do that in 2024 because then Joe Biden doesn't leave office and Joe Biden is your king. Like he can't do that till 2028 and he can't go for a second term. That's when he pulls out the authoritarian card, says it was all rigged and he has to stay in power. But not in 2024. Nobody wants Joe Biden to stay in power. Joe Biden doesn't even want to stay in power. You know what I mean?
Right, and that's the funny thing about it is that you know that when Donald Trump got voted in, my concern was solely that if he ever got voted out, he would not be willing to leave office, and I was
Right.
right.
Yep, you were right. But
My
he didn't leave.
concern with Joe Biden is not that Joe Biden wouldn't want to leave office. My concern with Joe Biden is that he will use part of that Trump playbook
Yes.
and further divide this country.
To protect the democracy.
And my hope is that when it comes down to federal law, like we've created so many laws that make the process of being able to vote complex.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the hilarity in this scenario is that the Republicans who lost in their states made the voting rights laws,
Right.
and then they lost to those laws.
Right.
And they were that schoolyard kid who's like, well, making up rules on the fucking fly.
Right.
And then they lost using their own rules, and then they said it wasn't fair. And if
Right.
you think the Democrats don't do that, nice
They're
try.
gonna they're not gonna have a choice though. If you say the elections are illegitimate in 2024
Yep.
and Democrats suddenly go, "Oh, you're right. We have to do it over again." That leaves Joe Biden in power. So it'll force him to stay in. He doesn't want to,
It will
but
not
it
leave
it
Joe Biden in power because, like we discussed with Donald Trump, so if you leave the elections intact, which this is where, if we do a little bit of a post-mortem on what happened, nobody questioned the legitimacy of the rest of the ticket. Nobody
right.
questioned that legitimacy.
No
And
down
here's
ballot.
what people need to understand. We swear in Congress before we swear in the president.
That's right.
And no matter what, our election laws are very clear. On January 20th at noon,
Mm,
the former president is the former. And if there is any sort of debate or discussion or anything is upheld or anything is held up, that person is still no longer president.
okay.
Their term ends on that specific time. So what happens?
Do we have no president or a Kevin McCarthy president?
Whoever is the Speaker of the House becomes
Mm,
the president.
right, which is Nancy Pelosi, which prevented anything. That's my
So,
point. Like,
dear God,
you want to reform this election thing that you're talking about, but it doesn't need reform. It's already a law that says you can't do what you wanted to try and do. They went around the laws, and no matter how broad you make the laws to trap somebody, you can always go around them, you
right?
know?
And that's the thing is that this country will have a president regardless. Just it's kind of the
That's right.
that mentality though is this coming from the same group of people who thought that Trump should have declared martial law. Like a number of military friends of mine were like, people
Yeah,
really
no.
don't want us to declare martial law, and I don't think they realize that.
No, they don't. They just want to be right. That's
And
my whole
that's
thing. You're driving towards an authoritarian that gets rid of all the minorities, which makes you the minority, you know?
exactly, and that's the fun thing is like people don't realize like what that actually looks like.
Right.
And for example, if you were to actually enact martial law, and this is something that we've talked about, your right to bear arms doesn't exist anymore.
Vladimir Putin, Xi in China, North
Hmm.
Korea, Cuba.
If you don't do what the military says, you become an enemy combatant. They
That's
have
right.
different laws and rules. They ain't going to treat you like the cops. It's
That's
like you
right.
listen or you die.
The
That's how
newspapers
it
in Hong
works.
Kong are gone. Alexei Navalny's in prison. The Uyghurs are in concentration camps. That's what opposition. That's what happens to opposition in authoritarian
And dear God,
lockdowns.
I don't want the fucking Speaker of the House to be president.
Nancy or Kevin? No,
Neither of
no,
them.
never,
Jesus Christ.
neither.
I no, hell
No.
no.
Uh-uh.
Like like I like I've said, honestly, if the Republican Party were to magically pick Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney as their dynamic duo for 2024,
Mhm.
I think it would be a fucking landslide. I think that the Democrats wouldn't stand a chance at this point.
I don't know about Romney. I just don't know.
I'm not saying that because I think he's a particularly great person that I would vote for. I'm saying that he bridges that gap for a lot of independents who are
Hmm.
pissed with the Democrats right now. Does that same group of people who voted Republican but said fuck you to Donald Trump?
Yes. I just heard that I watch news to prepare for this, and I watched
Hmm.
two Republicans, get this, on CNN debating Republicanism. And one was like, there's a lot of good Republicans that can run on what Trump did, but that can be a lot more logical in their legislating. And the other
Yes,
guy's like, we have to use Donald Trump. His name brand is everything. And I was like, no, she's right. She's right. 70 to 80% of Republicans want the Trump without the Trump. You know what I mean?
exactly.
And
And that's the thing.
that's what Trump was the first 2 years. Trump without the
Absolutely.
Trump. It was his cabinet making change. Linda McMahon, I wanted to say this. She was killing it for small businesses from
Hmm.
2016 to 2018.
Yes.
COVID, Donald Trump's ineptness destroyed her gains. Donald Trump's,
Yes.
like Intel is moving into Ohio based on Donald Trump's lowering of the corporate tax rate, but Joe Biden's stability. You know what I mean? Donald
Right.
Trump ruined any chances of advancement. And now we have this stable president that doesn't rock the boat, and companies love it.
And that's the thing is like when you think about like Romney and Liz Cheney, they voted with Trump 97% of the time, more than
Mhm.
people like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene voted with Trump. Think about that for a second.
She voted against voting rights and Build Back Better.
Like Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney both voted with Trump and some of the highest percentages of people in their party. They just
Hmm.
the rest of it was bullshit.
And
And they
Romney
didn't
did
like that.
stand up against things that weren't right. Romney
Hmm.
liked the Republican agenda that Trump was pushing out in the first 2 years. He did not like Trump's across the board decisions about things,
Hmm.
unilateral decisions without Senate because he realized that the Senate was an equal branch to Donald Trump, not subservient. And Mitch
Right.
McConnell thought if he played subservient, he could get what he got out of Trump. And he did, you know? And all
Right.
the other senators think it can happen again if they just keep their mouths shut and stay unified. You're destroying the country, though. Yeah, honestly, Aaron, you're destroying your own brand. Republicans won't be able to survive in this subservient form
No,
because their base sees them as powerful. And if you come off as weak and subservient, they're going to go independent and they're not going to vote at all.
right.
If you let them vote, if you don't subvert their vote by trying to diminish the Democrat votes, like I don't want to, I'm not going to get off the topic, but in Texas, they're 40 to 50% of mail-in ballot applications are being rejected because the old forms don't match the new law. Do you know who that's eliminating? Mail-in ballots are only allowed in Texas for the disabled and seniors. Seniors in Texas are fucking Republicans.
Right.
So by
You know,
trying to diminish the mail-in vote to diminish Democratic disabled, you're getting rid of 25% of your vote by diminishing the senior vote. That doesn't make sense to me, you know?
and that's the thing is like you said, if if Republicans ran on the policies that Trump was enacting through his cabinet
Mm-hmm.
without the Trump, you could literally take Mitt Romney and do that. And I guarantee you, come 2024, it would be such a fucking political beating.
Yeah.
Like it would make Donald Trump's loss seem pretty fucking mild compared.
Right.
Like, and that's the reality is that whether people want to admit it or not, in terms of economics, his policy the first 2 years worked.
He kept things going in a
His business
direction they
policy,
were
I will
supposed to
say,
go.
his business policies worked. His
Yeah.
his foreign policies, his domestic policies, his rights policies, that was all trash. The business side of it worked.
I don't like the subservience attitude he had towards foreign dictators, but I also
No,
didn't like his overbearing demeanor against people he thought were beneath him, like the leaders of France and Germany. Like he was just horrible in foreign relations. You weren't consistent, you know
no,
what I mean?
no, exactly that, exactly that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for listening to Public Access America. Tune back in for our Thursday episode, and we will be right back. And we are right back.
Yeah.
But I feel the same way. Here's the thing is what we're talking about. We're saying salt is better than pepper. And to me, it takes both for the world to work in harmony. And so having no Republican input on things and just obstruction irritates me because they're just not allowing advancements to happen with rational conversation. I want to know what their feelings are to the voting rights. I don't want to hear them say it's not happening because we all know the suppression is happening. It happened
Yep.
to me in Florida. I have no right to vote. You know what I mean? So right now, I don't have a right to vote. Coming up in the next year, more people are going to lose their right to vote. Look, if you can't assist somebody in voting in Florida, guess what? 80% of our population is over 100. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
but I don't see police pulling over buses from the villages going to cast their votes. I see them stopping Souls to the Polls buses, though. And that's a problem for me. You know what I mean? It's not
Mhm.
uniformly enforced, which is my problem with every law in the South. The laws that you propose in the North might seem rational, but they are misused and abused in the South. And that's why the Fed has to have something overarching when it comes to this, because they just go too far. And now people in Texas are losing their votes.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you know how I stand on anything like when it comes to a lot of these laws. I know
Of
that
course. Of
everybody
course.
gets this whole idea that, oh, my law is going to fix everything, and then it gets disproportionately used against
Uh-huh.
a certain minority, and then it's like, okay, cool, that didn't fix anything.
I have a gun to
It's
protect myself. Oh, somebody took it and killed somebody. Everything will be used in the opposite way by somebody, you know?
right. Or I have a gun to protect myself. Oh, I can't have that because I'm black and once upon a time smoked a joint. And that's
Yeah,
but that's the reality of it is
that's
that
right.
you know when you look at the history of it, that's what's so wild about it is that the history of it is just absolutely insane.
But then to
It's
deny that history because you're a
Mhm.
privileged guy that had never had it affect you, that was my issue with Rogue One. I'm a MAGA douchebag, which isn't his real name on Twitter. I just had to keep telling him, dude, your entitlement is showing. Because he's like, it won't be used that way. And I was like, your entitlement is showing because it has been. Like, there's hundreds of thousands of black people in prison based on misusing laws to incarcerate them and take their right to vote away. Like, how do you not know that about America, you know?
And that's the thing is like that's those everybody knows everybody knows that's the case. Think about it.
Yeah,
Why is it that sometimes you get pulled over for speeding and you get a warning, and sometimes you get pulled over for speeding but get a ticket?
right.
It's about discretion, and the
Uh-huh.
question is, whose discretion are you at any given point in time?
That's right.
I guarantee you, when I got pulled over with a gun in my car, you know, I got pulled over with a gun in my car. I had my permit saying, hey, I'm allowed to have this. I'm very open and honest. But that easily could have changed had the person that was sitting in the driver's seat not been me. And that's the
Right.
difference is understanding that there is the ideal way that the law should be applied. And then there is the way that it is or is not applied.
That's
And
right.
that's where the issue is at hand, is that everybody looks at application and makes this determination. This is a fun one here in Washington State. In Washington State, now, okay, so question: growing up in the Midwest, did you ever start your car and let it idle and let it
Yes.
run and then go back inside because fuck that, you're not sitting out there while it's freezing cold?
And fall asleep and run out of gas? Yes.
Growing up in Montana, you go out in the morning, you start your fucking car, it's 50 below outside. You ain't fucking sitting
Yeah.
out there while your car warms up. You go
Automatic
back
car
inside.
starters work with heat too. Yeah.
Yeah, if you were rich enough to, buy a car that had a starter in it, we
Yeah.
had a good old Cat's heater or a block heater, and you
Oh,
just run your
yeah.
fucking ass outside and you
An
start your
electric
car.
blanket for your motor. Yeah.
Yep. And so I'd go out and I go start my car up and then fucking run back inside. In Washington State, that's illegal. You cannot go start your car, go back inside, and leave it unattended.
That's crazy.
And what's funny is that I saw this argument take place, and a friend and I we were talking about this, about how it's illegal to let your car warm up without you in it in the state of Washington. Well, not too far from her house, um, the somebody had actually started their car to let it warm up, and then their car got stolen.
Yep.
And so one of the, everybody's like, oh, what's coming down? What's this world coming to these days? This is Joe Biden's America. And then somebody posted the RCW about how it's illegal to let your car warm up without you in it. And you would have just thought that, it's like the whole, like, breaking the law thing. It's like, well, here's the law. This has obviously been broken. Well,
Right.
officers have discretion.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it's you want laws, but you don't want them enforced when it applies to you. Okay, cool.
Right.
So if you start from just that base, like what laws are enforced that you don't want applied to you? Well, if you don't want them applied to you, then they shouldn't be applied at all. Period. End of story.
Right. And that's why it was a law, is because they were trying to reduce car theft and global warming.
More to the car theft than the global
Well, of
warming, but
course, but you have Jay Inslee, so I have to throw global
yeah,
warming in there because that's in everything. And honestly, letting my car run for an hour does more to affect the economy or
yeah,
the global warming. Like going meatless for one meal a week saves a month's worth of car carbon. Like it's the equivalent. So that's a big thing, you know?
and to me, it's like, I
Yeah.
look at some of this stuff and it's like, okay, let's actually figure this out. Like, what is the issue at hand? Like, does
Mhm.
that mean that, like, for example, this is a great one. So it's illegal to leave your car running. Like, you have to understand the context of the law. The context of the law is, when was that law written and put in place? It wasn't that global warming was the issue for
Right.
the car running. The issue was is that people would put their key in their car, leave it running, leave their car unlocked, and then their car would get stolen.
Right.
And that just takes away police resources to try and find and recover a fucking vehicle.
Or a worse thing that's happened actually in my neighborhoods were kids getting into the cars and
Or that
getting
safe.
hurt.
Exactly. And so the context of these laws is also important to understand. Was it actually a global warming thing? So if you have a car that has a remote start on it
Mm-hmm.
and your car stays locked and your car is warming up, is that still an issue because of the remote start?
If you're black, yeah.
Because what that would mean is that in that case, you know, let's be real honest, the whole point of having remote start in your car is so that way your car can warm up.
Mhm. Yeah.
So does that mean that remote start should be illegal because you can't have your car running unattended?
Yeah.
Or are we talking about in the context of global warming? Because either way, then remote start should be illegal by that standard if you're going to try and apply the law.
Hmm.
So if the issue is that we don't want cars to be stolen, but you have the mechanisms in place that number one, allow the car to run, but number two, stay secured, it
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be a problem. But if your issue is that you don't want cars running unattended because of global warming, then that doesn't work. And so like the context of that when these laws are written is very important to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that I've gotten your attention on how context is written, I'd like to introduce you to critical race theory. So when
Yes.
you think about that, the context in which these laws are written, you, in modern days, we're going to be lucky enough to understand and be able to see the debate and discussion as to why the laws were put in place. Courts are going
Mm-hmm.
to be able to look at that information and put rulings in place based on that. If the answer was they wanted to cut down on vehicle thefts, okay, so does this same law apply if your vehicle is locked but running and now somebody
Right.
can't get into it?
In other
Because
words, automatic car start should be mandatory instead of illegal.
exactly. Or if you're looking at it from the standpoint of global warming, that would mean that you don't want a car running unless somebody's in it and they're about to go somewhere. That
Hmm.
means that what you then have is you have something that is illegally allowing people to pollute the environment.
Right.
You can take and apply that law in either way. At the end of the day, it's the same law that vehicles cannot be running unattended. And that
Right.
context is what allows you to try and decide how that law is interpreted.
And who's
And that,
enforcing that on a corporate level when semis just sit there and run and
oh
warm
my
up for an
God,
hour, you know?
and so now think about how people are going to be willing to apply that law. Oh, this poor military family, he was supposed to go to work, but now his, are you really going to give a vet or an active member a ticket because they were warming their vehicle up so that way they could
Right.
go to the base?
Or the
Like, I
UPS
don't know any
guy.
cop that's going to want to give that ticket.
The UPS guy gets out of his truck to deliver a package, leaves his car running. That's bad. How do you enforce that? A semi delivers a trailer, sits in the dock, leaves it running, goes in to get something to eat. Is that illegal? It just doesn't make sense to me. A cab driver that sits there, like you
And
could go on and on.
and that's the thing is like that mechanism, now you have two ways to give somebody a ticket for that.
Hmm.
And it's like, look, your vehicle's unattended, you left it unlocked, it got stolen, you're getting a ticket for that. Oh, I'm super concerned about the environment, and the fact that you left your car out there running is
Hmm.
polluting the environment and it's causing harm to people, so I'm going to give you a ticket for that.
Right. No.
And then you have the question of who is that going to be applied to? That going to be applied to? Is
Well,
that going to be,
who's it going to be applied by? I think is
and
the
who's it going
first
to be applied?
question. The
Well,
person with the discretion and the discrimination or the discriminative behavior or thoughts, that's the person that's going to apply it. But who is that going to be applied to by? A white man that hates women, that's a misogynist, is going to be harder on a perceived female than he is another alpha man, right? And a guy that is racist is going to be harder on a Muslim or a black person than you or I. And that's just the truth. And that's the problem with laws is how they're interpreted.
and so that's where this idea of discretion is a serious problem. If the answer is your vehicle is running unattended and you're getting a ticket, doesn't matter if you were warming it up, doesn't matter,
Right.
it doesn't matter if it's locked, it's just ticket,
Right.
then that's the way that it's got to be applied. There should be no quote unquote discretion. But if there is discretion, then you need to clarify the law to the point that there is not.
Right.
And
But
that's the issue at hand is that and this is, keep in mind, we're just debating a simple law about whether
yeah,
or not you can warm up your
no,
car.
no, this goes to anything. This goes to any law, and this is what I wanted to talk about. The different way laws are used. Look, Rogue One, I'm a MAGA douchebag on Twitter, thinks it won't happen. What I'm saying is that it can. You can also use a hammer to open a door. It's not the correct way to do it, but people do it. You know?
Right. So there you go. Like if I really wanted to politicize this question, I would say that if I were a conservative, the way that I would apply this whole you can't have your car running is that, the law states you can't have your car running. You got your car stolen because it was running and unattended. I don't care who you are, you're getting a ticket for this.
Mm.
Oh, but it's got remote start. Well, I guess that's doesn't matter. But if you're going to apply it like that, you got to apply it like that. From the left side of the perspective, it's you're hurting my environment. So
I want to
based on
protect
that,
you
I'm
from
going
getting
to.
your car stolen. Yeah.
It's like, oh, I understand it's cold and I want you to be able to feel warm, but now you're hurting my environment. I'm giving you a ticket.
I can't
Like
trust you to make the right decision, so I
exactly.
need
So
to make you.
so the idea that something as simple can't have a left or a right interpretation
Right.
is absolutely bullshit, because you can do that.
You
Now
can't,
take
and you
something
do all the
far more
time.
and take something far more complex and far more nuanced in some cases.
Hmm.
And voila, you have this breeding ground for people to interpret these laws
Right.
in ways that benefit them. And
Or
that's
then
what's happening.
sneak in a little law that supports their version, right? And then suddenly their version is mainstream because yes, voting should be protected. Why? 400 400 votes. You know what I mean? It's not like we need 400 bills to combat 400 election fraud you know,
Right.
cases. So,
Right.
but that's my issue. And I was going to talk about hate crimes, and I had a poll on Twitter. Do you think hate
Ooh.
crimes are over sensationalized or underreported? And of course, underreported was the answer because there was 8,000 victims of 11,000 hate crimes. And I was looking because people are saying that discrimination against the disabled is on the rise. And so I wanted to find proof of that. And it's about 1.4% of the hate crimes. But my question is, and that's how I got back to where you were, was okay, it's a hate crime, but states don't want their state to be known for hate crimes. Counties don't want to be known for allowing hate crimes. So much like a rape victim, it's diminished or discounted and not taken as a hate crime. Like, you know what I mean? And then
Or I
suddenly,
would say that when a great chunk of your voting base are going to be people who have perpetrated hate crimes.
right.
Like you look at you like that whole like issue of, I need you to denounce white supremacy, but you won't fucking say it. You won't fucking
Hmm.
say the words. Because why? Because I don't want to alienate my voting base.
Right.
Look, I don't fucking want anybody who thinks they're a white supremacist fucking voting for me. Fuck you.
Right. I don't want
You look at what
anybody that,
Orrin Hatch said. Orrin Hatch was like, "My brother didn't die in Europe to let Nazi ideals, progress here in America."
right.
And that dude is a staunch Republican.
Well, I think a lot of it, like your electric car start to anything is my choice, my consequences. But when the consequences are bigger and affect other people, I think that's when we need a broader solution. And not all of it is another law. Look how many problems we could solve just by eliminating laws. What if a legislature just went through their catalog of laws and eliminated old discounted ones like the one you just talked about? You know, if we could get back to mainlining the 10 commandments of laws, like think about it as if you commit harm to another person, that's something we need to address. But if you're committing harm to yourself, that's your choice, your consequences. And
That's
we
I
need
think
to look
actually
at laws more that way.
want to say that's what Montana is doing right now is
Right. They do that
uh,
every 10 years, right?
30.
30.
Um, But the governor, the current governor, and I'm not exactly a supporter of him, basically came out and said it's like we need to go through the laws that are on the books and cut the red tape out that doesn't make sense and get rid of the laws that don't make
Yeah.
sense.
But honestly,
And
it has to go from one party to another. Like, go
absolutely,
ahead, Republicans, make your notes, Democrats, make your notes, and where there's common ground, those are eliminated. But if you don't
absolutely.
both agree, then no, it stays, you know?
I'd say then that's where we have our discussion and that's where we
Mm-hmm.
have our debate. And
Law
if it
per
doesn't,
law.
if it doesn't, if it has to stay on the books, it has to stay on the books, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But
Right.
if both parties sit down and go, this law doesn't make any sense, then
Mm-hmm.
it's like, all right, cool, let's get this fucking thing out of here.
Right. But I think it should, like, I don't know if they could sit down in these days, but if Republicans made their notes, Democrats made their notes, and then they got together and put it up on a board and the Venn diagrams were just eliminated and then the outliers were just pushed to another day, I'd be okay with that. You know
Well, and
what I
that's
mean?
and that's the thing is that I think if the parties would encourage regular order again,
Yeah.
if they would if we got past this fucking insane us versus them,
Hmm.
the other party is the enemy,
Yeah.
and actually sat down and had these conversations, I guarantee you would have more things happen, like clarifying this electoral college law of 1887.
Of course. And that,
You would have more discussion on and be able to get more people to, it's like, look, it used to be that, you gave your token resistance, but you knew on the back end, it's like we're passing this, and you're going to pass one of ours.
when everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And when you're obstructing everything based on a priority, nothing's a priority and you become a do nothing. But
Mhm.
the filibuster being ahead of debate is the issue. I think we all should debate. And then, yes, there should be a talking filibuster. Everybody should have their say. Everybody should try and sway everybody. But I also believe that those people are trying to sway the opinions of the people that they're being represented. So Ted Cruz might have an opinion, but in the end, it should be the people of his district or his state that form the opinion that he votes on. We don't elect him so he can go hunt Big Bird because nobody's paying him to hunt Big Bird. You know what I mean?
Well, this is where I think, like, especially on a federal level, one of the things, when you look at what we do on a federal level, we only vote for people on a federal level, and I really think that we need more direct democracies. Like, I
Me
really do
too.
think that, there are going to be times where we need to have, as a country, a vote on certain topics. Like, do we want voter rights legislation to be passed?
The
And
old Gallup
put
poll, right?
not even that, like actual fucking ballot. Put that out
A
there,
referendum
a
on
referendum.
national things like that every month.
Marijuana,
Yeah.
marijuana. I wouldn't say every month. I would definitely do it every November. Like,
We got a lot of issues to get through. I think every month for the first year might be in order. You know what I mean?
I'm, as much as I would love that, we're already having issues with trying to get people to the polls as it is.
Yeah, that's
I think
true.
if we can make it to where people can get to the polls on a specific day, I think election day needs to be a holiday. Period. End of story.
Definitely a
So that way,
weekend.
or yeah, or some point where people are able to get in and get their vote. Uh,
Yes.
so
Yes.
I think that's important to definitely have in this country. But at the same time, too, um, I think that there are certain things, when it was harder for us to communicate and harder for us to vote,
Hmm.
because of the logistics of the old days.
Right.
Having these indirect democracies, these representative democracies, made more sense. But now, given where we're at, it makes more sense to allow the people the chance to have referendums on topics like,
Yes.
should marijuana be legalized? I guarantee you that that would probably look to be about 70% saying yes. And
Does
if
that mean 100% have to live under that?
Mm, and I well, and that's the thing is that federally, if it's if it's if it's not criminalized, then the feds get out of the way. States can decide
Oh,
whatever they
great.
want to do
Okay.
with
Okay.
that. So if the states decide, yeah, no, we're not ready to implement that yet, they can still criminalize it, because in the law, what does it say? You cannot have uh your laws can definitely be stricter than the feds.
Right, but the Constitution supersedes any state law.
But basically what it says, so if we said that, weed is not federally illegal, and that's really all you have to put it, is
Mhm.
that from the standpoint of the feds, it's not an illegal product.
Right,
That
it's
allows,
decriminalization, not
yeah,
legalizing.
that allows banks and businesses to be able to operate in every single sense of the word of normal. These
Right.
people are already doing it and they're already paying taxes on it. So why
That's
the
right.
fuck not let them be able, let every state decide whether or not they're going to, how they're going to set it up or if they're
It's
going to set
just
it up.
it's just stifling an economy that's ready to grow. America keeps making these markets, green technology, cannabis. We're making these new markets that have never been seen before, renewable energies. And like a minority of the country is like, no, that scares us. We don't want change. We want the 1950s again. Like you heard Mitch McConnell's like black and Americans comment,
Right.
right?
Jesus
Like,
Christ.
and that's the way, no, that it, we all knew that's how he felt though. We all know that's how Republicans in general feel, that they want. Somebody said, Joe Biden asked, what are they for? And I had to respond on Twitter, the 1950s. Every one of their policies are related to going back to the 1950s. So they're scared of advancement, but we're going to lose the green industry to China. We're going to lose the cannabis industry to China. Fuck, I don't want to smoke
No,
Chinese weed. Their toys are
oh,
covered in lead paint. So we need to capitalize on capitalism where capitalism is growing, and we need to eliminate where capitalism is shrinking, like coal. There's 2,500 coal plants on the entire planet. It's not a big industry. We could eliminate it and move those jobs through education to other places where it's booming, like renewable resources. But we're not because people are scared. Ohio, I mean, do you think the people that built cars in Ohio know how to make a microchip? Do you think there's 3,000 people in Ohio right now to know how to make a microchip? No. But in a year,
there will be.
that's going to be the biggest microchip plant in the world. And that's going to be in Ohio.
And to me, that's exciting.
And
And
that's
and
not just Joe Biden. That is the government of Ohio, Republicans and Democrats working together to come up with a proposal that would get Intel there. It was Donald Trump creating a tax structure that corporations liked, causing them to shrink their supply chain. And it's Joe Biden's stability that allowed them to create that. That is everybody. It's not like Donald Trump keeping Carrier in Indiana for 6 months. That was one man trying to do one thing and he failed. But a whole of government approach to bringing businesses back and shortening supply chains, that worked. That worked. And
Mhm.
it took Democrats and Republicans, state, community, and national to get it done. And that's what happens. And that's what can continue to happen if we don't try and resist these advancements. Who fuck knows what a microchip does? Not 3,000 people looking at Ohio, but they will, like you said. And that's going to
Mhm.
spawn how many businesses around there, from Target to Applebee's to independent mom and pop shops, bookstores, and education. And what that's going to do to Ohio before 2024 is going to make people realize that politics is bullshit and community is awesome when you can all work together again, you know?
And on top of that, what would be great is once you get that fucking chip shop up and running, it's time to turn Detroit back into the Motor City, but make it the
Yes.
electric Motor City.
Yes.
Let's get that bitch back up and running. The best fucking
Yes.
cars came out of Detroit, and we all know that.
But I do want to say, Intel, I really hope you avoid putting your chips in Dell computers because Dell's based in Texas. And I don't believe any corporations in Texas deserve my money because their taxes go to fund policies that strip people of their rights. So and every other day, Pizza Hut sends me an email and I tell them their pizza tastes like oppression because they're also based in Texas. And I won't eat Pizza Hut. And I tell people, please don't eat Pizza Hut because you're based in Texas and you're funding these politicians that are making these oppressive laws. Please don't do that.
All
So
I know is
I
that
love Intel for moving to Ohio and not Texas. Like I am fully in support of Intel at this point.
all I know is that I found I found out that one of the local pizza joints here They have more than just red sauce and white sauce. They had a pesto sauce. We ended up doing a
Ooh,
pesto chicken bacon pizza.
wow.
Oh my God. I'm in love. It was everything that I wanted out of a pizza.
Oh my God. I bought 15 big cans of tomato sauce and I canned my own tomato sauce, mushrooms and pesto. I put pesto in there and then I balanced it with
Mm.
the oregano and basil and then I some garlic and mushrooms and onions and sauteed all that and put the sauce in. Dude, it's beautiful. You know what I mean? It's just it doesn't have all the yummy without all the yucky. I love canning. I did it with chili beans and made a vegan chili, which is fucking awesome. You know what else is good? The
Mm.
Morningstar chorizo.
Chorizo.
Yes, the veggie chorizo tastes just like chorizo without all the grindiness that comes with the,
Hmm.
you know what I mean?
This is so. This is a struggle for me, and it's. I don't like personally. I don't like all of these plant-based options trying to call themselves meat-based options,
Right.
and to me, it's like I get why they're doing it because they're trying to market as the alternative.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, the cognitive dissonance because I'm expecting like a real meat taste and texture, and it's not.
Yeah, right.
And the thing is like it's taken me a minute to get it out of my head. It's like this is not going to taste like what it says it tastes like. So
Right.
start from scratch, start with no expectations, and a lot of the stuff that I end up having, I actually there's quite a few things that I've had from Morningstar that I'm like, okay, that's actually fucking gross. I don't like
Oh
that.
yeah, the grillers was gross. Like that's not meat at all. Like
No,
no.
I like their quote unquote sausage. Like
Mm-hmm.
it tastes really great. It definitely doesn't taste like sausage at all.
Right. No, you
But
can't
I
go
think it's a
into
great
thinking that.
addition to like my fucking sandwiches. I think it's fantastic. Like when I'm
Yeah.
looking for just something a little bit extra, it's delicious. Their chicken nuggets don't taste like chicken,
Yeah.
but when I bake them and then tear them up and put them on a salad, it actually makes a
Ooh.
great addition to a salad. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. So it's not like especially as I get older and I realize I definitely need to add more plant material to my diet and
You could just
still
go
keep
for
eating my
plants,
steaks,
right?
still keep eating my meat, but I also need to like for me that cognitive dissonance has been real, like it was real hard for
Uh-huh.
me to get over.
Yeah.
And so as I've like learned how to reset my expectations when trying something,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I've been learning how to expand the things that I'm willing to eat because of that. And
That's cool.
and
The,
so
what I hate is the Impossible Whopper where they put 40 ingredients in there that are bad for me to create one veggie style something.
dude,
Like I
the
hate that.
impossible burgers are worse for you than the regular burger is.
Exactly. And that's my
That's the
point.
worst part.
Yes, but what I try and do is proportionate intake. So if I have a steak, that's cool, but it's going to be one third of my plate. It's not going to be a giant steak, a giant potato, and a little veggie. It has to be a combination where they're all equal portions. You know what I mean? Because for a diabetic, meat is gold. So that's a
Hmm.
tough thing to get rid of. But I also realized for me, it's the preservatives. It's the things they put in food to make them last longer that hurt me. And that's why I love canning my own chili beans because there's none of that. There's no additives, there's no colorings. It's just me
Hmm.
me and my sauce. And that's what I like. It's the same thing with I can get a Stouffer's lasagna. That's gonna hurt my body so bad for about 2 days because I'm not used to all the preservatives. I can't go to McDonald's and eat a burger and not taste complete salt, you know? And that's so now I have to make my own foods like this. But honestly, just cheese ravioli with some sauce, that's good. I just dumped a bunch of mushrooms in with, and it just all evens out. Yes, like the carbs are bad in the ravioli, but when I have twice as much meal in other forms, then it balances out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and that's I think that's one of the things that I need to figure out how to do more of is do some more canning. So that way,
Yeah.
like, on my weekends when I have that urge to, make something and preserve it, I can actually just do that. Because
Yeah.
I would love to get into the habit of doing stuff like that.
Yeah. It takes
Because
two
I had a
mason
lot of
jars.
yeah, I took, because I used to do that a lot. We did that a lot when I was a kid. We had a
I'm
bunch of different
sure.
canned stuff. So I just need to actually like figure out what it is I need to get in order to do it. And, whether it's like an electric canning setup or something like that.
I just, you know, the people that lived here before left a box full of mason jars, so I washed them. And yeah, I just made the sauce, put it in there, set it in the fridge, and the lids collapsed as it cooled. And I was like,
Oh
there
yeah,
it is,
oh yeah. There's a lot of it where yeah, that's all you got to do is you just got to
Yeah.
get it hot enough and then it'll seal on its own. But there's some certain things that I want to make and
Mm,
store where I actually need to have like a canning setup because I need to have
yeah.
it pressured.
Like jellies and
Hmm.
oh, there's some like I tried making, I don't know if you guys know what jardinere is, but it's like hot peppers in pickled hot peppers and
Oh yeah,
carrots.
no, I know what that is. That's
Yeah.
the my mom used to my
Mm.
no my grandmother used to make that all the time.
I love it, and it goes perfect on a Chicago beef. And I've been trying to work on that. I just didn't realize because I didn't research this stuff. I just bought 10 pounds like 10 fucking things of
Oh yeah.
jalapenos, cut them up, put them in vinegar and oil, and then I came back the next day and the oil was just congealed at the top, and I was like, "Well, these suck." So I tried again, but then I'm watching Bobby Flay. Beat Bobby Flay is a real interesting show because it brings in other people and I love that. It reminded me of us. But I learned these little things like you got to boil it in vinegar and sugar, and then
Right.
can it. So,
Oh, my personal favorite was there was like one of those chef shows where you had to impress like all these different chefs,
right.
and they were just like they were like the course was fried chicken, and of course everybody did their own thing, and they had like their proprietary list of ingredients, and what was
Yeah.
it, this person was they're like, oh my god, this is the best fried chicken I've ever had, and they're all like, oh my god, I don't understand how you did this. The guy's like, yeah, it's just salt, pepper, Crisco, and flour,
That's
and they
right.
were all like, what?
That's right. That's how
Like some of
Bobby
that
beats
stuff.
everybody is by doing it simple, but adding flavors, but not trying to do too much, you know?
Exactly. Some of that stuff, like it's like you do it simple and it turns out fucking amazing, incredible.
Yeah.
Or then you end up having, you end up like Devi and you have Devi's nose, and they can just create every fucking flavor under the sun and it's
Mm,
delicious.
really. I think that's a kitchen thing. Like I've been
Oh
in
yeah.
kitchens where no matter what I do, what I made tastes good. And I've been in kitchens where no matter what I do, that food just comes out like crap?
Oh, well, for me, like because I just don't have the same sense of smell, like
Mm,
I can't taste when something is spiced. Like I can't figure out
yeah,
what spicing looks like.
I know what you mean.
It's more of an art, and Debbie's great at that. But like when it comes to baking, I'm fantastic at baking.
Me too. Me too. My cookies rule the world. My chocolate chip cookies rule the world. I told my roommate, I was like, these are for you because you did a good thing, but I don't make these for everybody. Consider yourself special. And he was like, because I made fudge, peanut butter fudge, but I used
Mm,
cocoa powder, and it turned out to diminish the taste. I couldn't taste anything. So I chopped up the fudge and made cookies with them.
hey,
And it was awesome. He's like, what is that? And I'm like, that's the fudge I didn't like. And he's like, these are good. I was like, yeah.
perfect. There you go.
So I'm glad. I'm glad you like bacon. What do you like bacon?
Uh, Cookies, cakes, breads. Those are like my biggest staples.
I do like a
Um,
banana bread, that's for sure.
I do a pumpkin chocolate chip bread that apparently made my 90-year-old neighbors fight over who got the last piece.
That's cool. That's
Um,
awesome.
and so that was fun. Um, but yeah, I do like to get out of my own head. I like to bake, and so I
It's
I
very
I'm looking.
measured. I could see why you would like that. It's very measured and precise. It's not just
It's a science,
willy-nilly throwing spices in like a chili where you have to
right?
layer them in over and over. It's like, here's the amount of flour, here's the amount of cornstarch. If I use too much baking powder, shit's gonna explode.
And that's the thing. Like for me, it's like it's very much based in science, but then a little bit to taste.
Right,
Whereas cooking is like a little bit of measuring, but the rest of it is all just art. And that
right,
Debbie and I've had that conversation multiple times. It's like the reason Debbie is good at cooking is because there's a general direction, but you get this whole canvas to play with. Whereas
right,
when it comes to baking, it's like this is very precise, very measured, and then okay, we'll do a little bit to taste.
right. Yeah, chili would be more like a painting, like an oil painting to me.
Hmm.
I do want to. I On Twitter, I put some of the topics we were going to discuss, and my head going into this, I've for about 3 years, everything that I do, every routine I have is umbrellaed under pain. you know?
Hmm.
Like for about 3 years, it has been a consistent pain that goes from like a 10 to a 20, back down to a 10. And I wanted to, and I know that you are an expert on pain. I know Emily, she's a veteran of pain, and I know Devi's disability is pain. And I just wanted people to understand that, I mean, maybe you can explain, does pain affect your mental health? Do you
Oh,
think pain
absolutely.
is one of the main contributors of mental health diminishing?
I would say it is a main contributor.
Hmm.
I want you to think about this.
But I mean,
Your
how
brain
many people in America do you think honestly just deal
have
with
deal with chronic
pain?
pain.
Yeah.
Oh, I would bet that there's probably, I mean, chronic pain. I'm trying to think of when I was working in the hospital system, one of the things that we were looking at was people with chronic pain, because there was a two-part issue there. Number one, how do we keep them off of opioids? Because we knew where that would
Right.
go.
Right.
But number two, like, you know, this was a study that I was actually going to be a part of before I ended up getting a different job, was, you know, is mental health affecting pain, or is pain affecting mental health? And that
Hmm.
was going to be a really interesting test.
That is interesting because I can focus on a pain until it drills into my soul, until that pain, that two pain is a 10 pain because all I do is focus on it. And then
Right.
there's times when I can ignore something and then like an hour later be like, I'm not in pain. And
Right.
I want to say 24 hours I've been pain free because I got a new regimen. So that's what made me want to address it, is because suddenly I realized I got 8 hours of sleep and I just feel much, much better. And I think people can tell I'm not slurring or stammering over my words. And that's pretty much why, you know?
So I would say that this is definitely two parts. Like, there's multiple parts to pain, obviously,
Of
but
course, right.
there's a couple of ways you can look at this. Number one is, how much bandwidth does your brain have? Everybody's brain is capable of processing different things,
Right.
and I think this goes to whether or not, I can't say as whether or not you're on the if you're on the spectrum, how pain affects you versus,
Mm,
somebody like me who's, you know,
neurodivergency, right.
yeah, neurodivergence versus,
And
people
experience.
with neurotypical brains, or people who are introverts versus extroverts, people who are,
Fibromyalgia, things like that. Yeah.
like, everybody's brain has a different way of processing everything,
Yeah.
period, end
And
of story.
every body part has a different pain. You know, like
Exactly.
if I had a pain in my forearm, that wouldn't be as bad as a pain in my anus. You know what I mean?
So when it comes down to the brain's ability to process pain, the question is how much bandwidth does your brain have for processing
Hmm.
pain? And I think that this is where, like, whether or not, there's a genetic factor to it. If, because I want to say redheads feel more pain. I want to say that's actually scientifically proven. Um, but then neurodivergence and all these different levels, when you have only so much bandwidth to process different things,
Hmm.
like, think about it this way. If, let's say that you've got this garden hose, and, you know you cut off the flow to half of the hose. Let's just say that, what happens, like when you think about when you put your thumb over part of the hose,
Oh yeah, there's more
it goes
pressure for sure.
more pressure. And so for people that, for some people, like, that lack of bandwidth just destroys their ability to process anything other than pain.
Yes. Yeah,
And
it's
so
real hard to focus on routine or cleanliness or, all those routine based things when you have to suddenly stop because you're in too much pain to move.
absolutely. So when you have that pain that you're only able to focus on, and if that pain doesn't go away and subside, it absolutely hurts your mental health,
That wears
because
you
you
down,
don't
man.
you don't feel like a functioning human being.
Right.
And I know that there's going to be a lot of other people that are going to be able to speak to this better than I can, because I have a permanently torn shoulder.
I
And
know.
for
That's why
me,
I
like,
bring it up. That's what I think
I
about.
have learned how to ignore it most of the time. And so, like, it
Right.
doesn't actually take up a whole lot of bandwidth, but there are times when it absolutely comes through. So, like, when the weather was changing the other day, all I could feel was my fucking shoulder. It
Right.
sucks. I hate being a human barometer, but I also know that, like, for me, most of the time, I'm able to get relief through simple things like, taking some ibuprofen, even though I really shouldn't be taking ibuprofen anymore.
Right.
I can at least get myself managed for a little bit and let that
Mm-hmm.
work its way out.
Right.
But for other people where that pain is constant, whether it's joint pain, rheumatoid disease, you name
Any
it,
pain, yeah.
um,
Migraines,
that
hemorrhoids.
absolutely, when that does not go away, that absolutely starts to affect your mental health.
Yeah.
When you think about it, like our bodies run on a very well, there's a baseline normal, and if all we can do is focus on the thing that hurts, we're not able to enjoy things that give us dopamine, that improve our levels,
Right.
our happiness levels, our functioning levels. So your brain essentially starts to starve of dopamine, and then it absolutely works you into a depression.
Yeah.
Now, from my perspective, so before the injury, before I had anything wrong, I had severe depression, severe clinical depression, and
Me too.
that chemistry of my body chemistry affected my brain so much that everything hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So it absolutely, it can go both ways. It can absolutely go both ways. When you and I'm sure that when you think about how body chemistry can affect your ability to feel pain, if your body is burning through the things that make you feel good and you can't get that feeling,
Right.
it it receives all of that information on your pain, that those receptors.
Yeah, that's a
So
good point. Right.
so
Even your
you
emotions run through pain.
exactly. So when you don't have anything to take up those receptors that say, hey, this feels great and I'm happy,
Mm-hmm.
and all you have are open receptors that are receiving pain information, ugh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I want to say, my blood sugar, my A1C was 13.3 like 3 years ago. And I discounted it, diminished it, went to the doctor for everything. It was swelling my intestines, causing that pain. And when I went to a salad-based diet, exercise, routine change, my A1C a week ago is 7.3, and 7 is normal. Like I
Mhm,
asked her, can I get down to 3? And she said, yeah, if you're dead. And I was like, all right. And so they're starting to take me off those medications. And now I'm working on healing those things that hurt that are
mhm,
left, because now my liver and my kidneys aren't swelling, my colon isn't swelling, my bladder shut, all these wonderful things. And now I'm
mhm,
getting sleep. I'm not in pain. I woke up this morning and I was like, oh shit, there's no pain. And I went back to sleep.
mhm.
So I just think that's cool. And I think more people should recognize that pain has an effect on others, and we all kind of go through that.
Absolutely. Like it's
Mm.
very pain is one of those things where this is one of those things where when with chronic pain management, I know that a lot of hospital systems in rural settings, at least in Washington, they were
Hmm.
trying to focus on how do you deal with pain management, because if they could deal with pain management and get you to a better baseline, they knew that they would be able to change all of these other things that might be happening.
Right.
So
You can't do a good routine when your routine is just to get rid of something you can't get rid of.
exactly.
Oh my God, Jeffrey, I got the best Christmas gift. It was a little late, but I got it. Aaron Rodgers. Bye. Oh, it was so beautiful. And honestly, that game was horrible. And I watched about a quarter and a half, and my power went out. And it didn't come back on. And I had to watch like the news, and they said, yeah, Green Bay isn't going any further. And I was like, yes. Liars lie and they never win.
Exactly. So yeah, and of course, you could just hear like the butt hurt. It's like,
Uh-huh.
the Packers as an organization, like the Packers as an organization are putting up with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So you know what? Change
It's
something and maybe I'll feel differently.
it's just so funny. He might be the best quarterback in the worst league. He might he not he I don't think he's the best quarterback his division, but he might be the best quarterback in his division, but that is the worst division in football. So the Packers think they're gold and they're walking around with puffy chests, but they couldn't possibly beat anybody outside of their division, to be honest, consistently. And that's why I'm so happy. I don't like him. I just don't like him.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm a Chicago Bear fan and he's an anti-vaxxer douchebag. So I'm happy that he failed. I don't even really care about San Francisco. You know what I mean? But I'm
Right.
so happy they won just to prove Green Bay a lesson. You're not great. You've never been great. Half of your games are with teams that are inferior to you. And that's why you have the schedule and the reputation you do. But you can't go outside of your division and consistently beat like Baltimore or any other team, you know what I mean? So
Right.
yay. What do you think's going on with I kind of want to get your opinion. This isn't. So Vladimir Putin and Ukraine, you got any opinions on this shit?
I actually posted a status on this,
Okay.
and so let me read that to you
Okay.
because I think that this is absolutely one of my favorites that I've posted.
Hey, Vladimir
Um,
Putin, here's how Public Access America feels about you, brought to you by
so
Public Access America.
so the way that I put it was, imagine being bullied. Day after day,
Right.
your bully hits you, kicks you, hurts you, turns friends against you, and threatens you every day.
Yep.
You get tired of being bullied, so you make some new friends. You get stronger mentally. You do stuff that makes you stronger. You know your bully is still bigger than you, but you have bigger friends now, and you learned how to fight back. Now your bully says you're threatening him. And that is how I describe what Russia is doing to Ukraine.
Right.
And it
Ukraine got
basically,
the bigger friends, right?
yep.
Yeah.
And so, this is one of those things where whatever the fuck Putin has decided to do is not great. And I would say that whatever Europe decided was went in terms of allowing themselves to have
Negotiations? Fuck you.
with Russia for Russian gas. I think that's just absolutely
Oh.
dumb what they did.
Well, the new German leader said if they invade Ukraine, that's off. We're turning it off. And I thought that was pretty bold to say. And I know America will supplement them. I know
Oh
we
yeah.
will. We'll subsidize natural gas. We'll pour it in, you know. But the problem is that Ukraine earns $250 billion a year from the pipeline that runs through them, you know. But what I didn't like was out of nowhere, Putin put a knife up to the world's throat and said, I have demands. You didn't even try any other way. No, you can't come at me with a gun and get what you want. Like you said, a bully can't just walk up to me and say, give me your lunch money. I'd rather get the shit kicked out of me. You know what I mean? Than kneel to some guy. And I don't like that. I want a unified front. I'm telling people I would love it if we just mass troops along Russia's border in every other country. And if Russia moves forward, they move forward because you can't defend your whole territory at once, you know.
That's and that's the
And
thing is like, they're like NATO, Ukraine can't join NATO. It's like, well, that's up for Ukraine to decide if they want to
right.
join NATO, number one.
And that's the other
And
thing.
number two, then it's up to the members of NATO to decide whether or not Ukraine is going to join NATO. So,
Right.
like, and also three,
Yeah,
NATO has
Ukraine can
always
see
been,
who they want, buddy. They're your
yeah.
ex. They're not your current.
Well, and that's the thing is that, even like there's a really great article about, you know, what the current relationship between Ukraine and Russia looks like right now. A lot of Ukrainians who spoke Russian primarily have gone back to speaking Ukrainian because they're, they feel as though they've just been bullied and pushed around and they're
That's
over it.
right. That's right. Nobody wants to live under communism. NATO is the choice. Communism or, you know, I'm not saying
I don't
full
I
on
don't even think
democracy because they're not
I don't
all
even think you
democracies.
I don't even think Ukraine necessarily wants to live under NATO.
I don't
I
think
think
so either.
I think they're looking to NATO because of Russia. Like
Right.
legitimately, they had absolutely no reason to join NATO until 2014.
Because their choices are NATO, democracy, communism, Vladimir Putin, or something of their own choice. And they're free to do that. And the other thing is, Vladimir Putin says NATO is encroaching on his sovereignty and security. The only reason NATO exists is because he's the threat. You know what I
Well,
mean?
well,
So
NATO
it
existed because of the Soviet threat back in the day,
right, right. And
and then
now
all
the
of these
Vladimir
independent.
Putin threat.
Right. It's like NATO hadn't done absolute dog shit
Right,
between, the fall of the Soviet Union and when Putin decided that he wanted to try and rebuild whatever the fuck it is that he's trying
right.
to rebuild. Like for the longest time, NATO was more like a drinking club.
That's right. That's what it is. It's basically they met a couple times a year to have fun, like the G7 or the G20. But
Right.
they're only there to counter the threat from communism. And China really isn't a threat in Europe that way. Economically, they are, but not militarily, you know.
No.
In North Korea, they might be sending a rocket to the United States, Hawaii, Guam, Japan, but not Europe. But that's just so risk. In my mind, I just see the game of risk with Russia piling. And the other thing is, like, we're all worried about Ukraine, but we're not worried about the other former Soviet countries where the seeds of his instability are being laid. Like
Hmm.
right now, yeah, Ukraine is the watermelon that grew, but in these other countries, like what was that with the gas price hike in Kazakhstan? Not Kazakhstan, damn it.
Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan. Like, how do you not see that as a total instability by Russia in an initial stage? He caused there was a conflict over rising natural gas prices. They didn't diminish the threat by giving them more natural gas to lower the prices. They brought in military and killed almost a thousand people. Maybe it's 1,000 imprisoned, 120 killed.
Yeah, there was a few dead, but there was like thousands, a thousand or two
But
that
they
were
they
imprisoned.
didn't try and stabilize the economy to help the people. They used that as a chance to oppress the people, you know? And that's going to happen in other places like Lithuania and Estonia, which by the way, thank you to Lithuania and Estonia and the other one, Luxembourg? No. Three countries started sending aid to Ukraine, and I thought that was really
Latvia,
cool.
Lithuania, and Estonia.
Latvia, right. Those three, because they're going to catch a lot of shit. They're on the front line right there, and Russia could
Hmm.
retaliate just for that. So I really respect them for doing that. I don't know anything about Estonia. You rock, though. Lithuania, you're my heroes. Latvia, I want to be there after Malta, though.
I would love to go see the Baltic states. I think that would be a
Oh, yeah.
fantastic
Me
journey.
too. Me too. Is there anything you want to review or mention or tell people to pay attention to?
Um, let's see. Uh, I would say honestly, get your boosters if you
Oh,
haven't done that
yeah.
already. That's a good idea. Just because there's plenty of evidence out there that boosters, while not as effective, are still pretty damn good against Omicron.
Nice.
Lots of people are catching COVID out there, especially a lot of friends of ours. And, they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, I just felt like an awful head cold and we're better.
That's what the boosters do. That's what the
Yep.
boosters do. So I found a new artist. What's her name? Joy Oladokum.
Mm.
Just beautiful. Just beautiful. So if anyone has a chance, check out Joy Oladokum. I'm still trying to learn the name, but I heard her on Song Exploder and I bought the album before the episode was finished. So
Nice.
and the other one is there's this, I know you don't watch a lot of TV, so I tried to avoid it, but there is literally the best Travelocity commercial. The new Travelocity commercial could be the best ever commercial for this age, like in history. And it all has to do with the Travelocity denier.
Oh God.
So, but it really I don't I know Dan doesn't agree with this. I don't know how you feel about it, but I believe when a society reaches the stage of mocking things, that's when it becomes less serious. And I think MAGA getting mocked for being MAGA is appropriate. Just like jaywalkers getting mocked for jaywalking was appropriate. It stopped jaywalking. I think we need to make fun of these conspiracy theorists
I mean,
that don't
we
trust the government, but then totally trust a section of the government.
right.
It's hypocritical.
And I mean, there is evidence that that has worked in the past. I mean, you know, in the old 1950s Superman comics, they made fun of the Ku Klux Klan, and membership dropped.
Right. I think that's just how it is. Once we mainstream the mocking, and that doesn't mean all of us as an army on Twitter being trolls, but when Travelocity does something like that, it's just so cool. You know,
Hmm.
she's just like the anger in this mother-in-law's voice. They're lying to you. Open your eyes. Urgh. It's just so perfect. It's so deadpan. It's like it's awesome. If
It's hilarious.
I might send you a link. It is hilarious. And I that's how I see MAGA people like Rogue One. I'm a MAGA douchebag that just try and get under your skin while you're trying to have a reasonable discussion. You know what I mean? I understand some people are off-putting by nature over text, but you don't need to insult each other. Just having a rational discussion. You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
talked to this guy, John Johnson, about racism, and I was teaching him and he was teaching me, and he's like, I just started this journey about learning about this, and I was like, me too, and we're going to have him on the show to talk about it. And so we're
Fantastic.
making connections. But that's it. We and I told him, did we just reach a compromise on Twitter? Did we just use Twitter to have a solution-based conversation? This is awesome. And that's what we
Hmm.
do on Twitter. So check us out on Public Access Pod. We have a lot of discussions, a lot of groups. We're influencing Texas politics now, by the way, in a way that I didn't think we could, but I can't say much about it on air. So thank you for listening to Public Access America. I'm Jason. He's Jeffrey, and we will see you at our next live stream next week. Bye. I love it.
Fantastic.
But there is I talked to this lady in Texas, and she's like, I don't get politics. And I was like, here's the thing. I don't understand